You might not have noticed towards the end of the first quarter of Game 7 that the Thunder coach Mark Daigneault did something kind of strange. While Jamal Murray is forcing a contested midi that gets embarrassingly reclaimed by Chet Holmgren, if we go back, we'll see that Alex Caruso, all 6'5" and 186 pounds of him, is guarding Nikola Jokic. And you might ask yourself, where the heck did this idea come from? Well, you need only go back one game when OKC tried it deep in the fourth of a matchup that was pretty much already decided. And I want you to notice something about the strategy Denver employs. On the first 3 possessions, they utilize a Jokic screen to force a switch and get Caruso off of him. The first time, Jokic has Jalen Williams on him, glances over his shoulder, and sees a tiny window to fire it to Brown. The next time, he ball screens for Aaron Gordon so he can go to work on Holmgren. After the backhanded slap in the face, he attacks the nail one-on-one, with SGA daring him to throw it to a red-hot Julian Strawther for the open corner 3. The Nuggets then turn to the Murray-Jokic pick and roll, which forces a switch, and Murray isn't saying any thank yous to Jokic as he just gets ripped, and it led to a mini 6-0 run that made it slightly interesting at the end as they finally let Jokic try to cook him in the middle of the floor. But Caruso is much quicker and lower, enabling him to poke the dribble out and trigger a fast break and a layup. This even helped OKC indirectly, as Jokic is almost always in a trail position, allowing Caruso to be near half court when Chet pokes his ball away from Aaron Gordon. Just look at this incredible effort to get the loose ball, and it was directly because of this layout that Gordon pulls his hamstring and was a shell of himself in the deciding next game when they clearly needed him at 100%. But if we want to find out when the seed of this idea was initially planted, we have to go way back to November. Without Isaiah Hartenstein or Jalen Williams and Chet needing a rest, the Thunder turned to Caruso to guard Jokic at the end of the first quarter, and they smartly got him to the elbow, lobbed it over the smaller defender, and Jokic gets the layup off the glass, easy peasy. But we can see how his quickness and speed can affect this matchup as he brings up the rear after falling down on offense and deflecting the pass to Jokic into a turnover. But here's where we started to get an inkling of what was to come and what has made Nuggets fans so upset about how Game 7 unfolded. At the top of the key, we see Caruso in legal guarding position, directly in Jokic's path and squares to the ball. Jokic lowers his shoulder to initiate contact. There is quite a reaction, but even in the regular season, the refs say play on. As the shot goes up, Caruso then begins to impede Jokic's progress to the basket, and when it becomes clear that it directly affected Jokic's ability to grab the rebound, the refs call the defensive foul. When they hooked up in March, I was able to find one possession where they opted to put Caruso on Jokic at the end of an already decided game. And here's where we really start to see the kind of physicality that led to Game 7. Before there is any contact, Jokic already begins to leave his feet into a bent-over swim move, stepping on Caruso's foot and knocking him backwards. This dissipates, so the refs let it go, and now we see it's Caruso's turn to use his right arm on Jokic's right waist to leverage himself around to the high side. We can also see Jokic grabbing at Caruso's hand before swiping it off. They separate quickly, so I imagine that's why they let it go as well. As the shot clock winds down, it's apparent they want the ball at the elbow, so Caruso jumps in front to beat him to the spot. I just don't see Jokic's left arm putting enough force to cause such a big response from Caruso, and neither did the refs, but it dissuaded the pass long enough that when he finally does get it and faces up, he has no choice but to fire up a midi, with Caruso gazing lovingly into his eyes. So we have to imagine Coach Daigneault kept this idea in the back of his head but didn't dare use it until we got to Game 6. And based on these results, it's no wonder he turned to it so much in Game 7. On the second possession of Caruso versus Jokic, Murray wants to feed the post, but Denver makes a mistake. By having Russell Westbrook inbound the ball, it allows his man to hover at the block and take away the pass. And while this triggered an inside ball screen that got rejected and might have had the refs sighing in relief that this pair wasn't directly involved in the play, I had to bring Ronnie Nunn in to talk about it since he was an NBA ref for 19 years and Director of Development of Officials for 5 more, plus he was on the court during the glory days of the post-up and understands the advantage of physicality.
Well, Coach, in this one right here, you can see that initially Jokic is in the post-up position and he's going to turn to get a face-up for an entry pass. And as he turns, Caruso wants to get in front of him. And there's a little arm ward off there by Jokic. It's certainly not enough for a foul. Now, in this instance, both players are kind of hugging each other. And now Caruso says, okay, I've done enough of a job. And as he begins to move behind him, now you see the hug completely. And the reason why you know there's a hug is there's a follow retaliatory action by Jokic. He lifts his arm up to clear that space for the entry pass, but it's more about get your arms off me. That's an example of why we've got to pick up that foul. So Caruso knows that he's not going to be allowed to hug him or to what people might call maul him. This is post-up freedom of movement. And it can happen on the perimeter with the player with the ball or without a ball. And here's a post-up that, we don't know we're going to have a post-up, we're going to have a screen, but we got one thing going for sure. We got a guy who is holding a guy throughout the entire sequence. And the culprit here is Caruso.
So let's look at some more clips, because I think the failure to take advantage of such a smaller defender on Jokic was more about the Nuggets' strategy than it was about possible fouls Caruso was getting away with. The first thing you have to understand is that Caruso is an irritant, someone who wants to bump and grind in order to mentally and physically tire you out. We can see he's moving backwards and just puts an armbar up. Jokic's reaction moves a little bit into flop territory, but he also uses his right knee to create some separation. At this point, the Nuggets had no solution to when a defender fronts the post, like flash someone to the free throw line and then hit Jokic ducking in. I'd expect a veteran like Russ to be better in this situation as Jokic moves to get in low post position on Caruso here, but because he's not a threat from the outside, his man can sag and eliminate the low post entry. He simply shouldn't be in that position, and he compounds the issue by throwing a weak pass to a cutter who wasn't open, and they miss another scoring opportunity. The Nuggets look completely unprepared for this defensive strategy as their spacing is terrible from the get-go. Trying to have Russ feed the post is suboptimal because his man just sags off, and Jokic can't skip to Murray because of the double team. Good cut by Russ, but he takes way too much time finding the open man, allowing the defense to recover. On the reset, this is a clean strip by Caruso. And remember, once the ball is cleanly knocked loose, any other contact to the arm is deemed incidental and not a foul. Caruso is too good to fall for the rip-through attempt at a foul, and Denver lures the exact shot they want, and Chet cleans up the board. Again, the Nuggets offense is not playing with a sense of purpose. Jokic is posting up on the weak side, Caruso has his right arm out to deny the pass, but it does clamp and Jokic has to lift it up and out of the way. This could have been called a foul to clean up the physicality, but the refs clearly wanted to stay out of the way of a Game 7 as much as possible, which is reasonable considering the stakes. As soon as Jokic begins to come to the strong side to call for the ball, Brown for some reason swings it back to the other side. Jokic half-heartedly screens and rolls, knowing Watson isn't going to attack with his left hand. Now we've got some more contact where Caruso is allowed to beat him to the spot. Where it gets a little problematic is when he uses his arm to essentially box him out and impede movement across the lane. However, Jokic is also leaning into him, adding his own two-hand push into the back. So the refs make a decision to let them both ride the line as Russ hits the gimme corner three. On this play, Caruso has gotten the green light from the refs to clamp behind him when fronting. So he tries an even bolder attempt where we see a brief grabbing of the buttocks. This is the moment they needed to clean this up, but the grab doesn't linger, and the more important point is that the Nuggets don't have a plan to attack when he is fronted. In fairness, hardly anybody tried this during the regular season, but you can see how a quick lob over the top can be very effective in getting a layup. However, the Lakers did front him often, and this could be why Caruso did it so much, as Vanderbilt knocks it loose cleanly before the contact over the back. And perhaps because they lacked reps with this type of pass, they were prone to be inaccurate on them, indicating it was a great strategy by OKC. To finish that last play we were looking at after Caruso fronted, they swing the ball to the left corner. The spacing along the left baseline is bad, and so is the angle Russ is trying to throw this pass. We can see both players equally trying to command space under the basket, so I can see why the refs felt like this was even and didn't need to be called. He is in the key for longer than 3 seconds as well, and even though we see a hug here and then contact on the back and hit by Caruso's left hand, I think the reason they didn't call this a foul was because the pass wasn't catchable. Specifically in a Game 7 for all the marbles, I can understand why they left this one alone, but this is a good reason why their Nuggets fans were upset. Right when they realized Caruso was guarding Jokic, they took a timeout, and I don't understand why they weren't busy diagramming a plan of attack in the huddle as Coach Adelman gets up with his clipboard. And the final play of the first quarter illustrated his lack of plan the best, as they slowly bring the ball down, and it's this kind of thing I don't like from Jokic. Caruso is backing up in front of him, but not impeding his movement, and it's Jokic who does the swim move and lifting his knee into the leg of Caruso that is unnecessary. All of this took way too much time, and you can see Murray is frustrated by the confusion, and it leaves Jokic no space to get into the paint, leaving him with this low percentage one-footed fadeaway that isn't close. With Jokic going to the bench to start the second quarter, the Thunder had already shifted this game in their favor. So they get him back in to deal with Caruso, with Coach Adelman signaling for a play, but something is off. Murray is trying to get Strother out of the corner to give more space to the Jokic post-up. Russ doesn't clear out of the way, enabling Hartenstein to offer support and Wiggins to bump down to take away the layup. Strother couldn't recreate his heroics on the road, and great box out by Caruso gets them the ball back. In our last video on Jokic, I discussed how his two-motion over-the-head shot can be disrupted by defensive pressure. And here's another example where Caruso's close contest influences the shot to slam long off the backboard. It was startling to me to see it take this long for the Nuggets to finally get the ball at the nail and flatten out to give him maximum space to work in the lane. There is nothing Caruso can do to stop this back down, and Chet was way late with his help, turning his rotation into a three-point play. I guess Coach Adelman had forgotten that in Game 5. They had Murray screen for Jokic with the express purpose to get the switch of Caruso onto him, and he did the same exact thing by backing him down into the paint against the spread floor and getting an easy shot over the front of the rim. That brings us to a crucial possession that was the beginning of the end for Denver, and we need Ronnie to give us his insights since Nuggets fans were livid over the outcome.
Yeah, well, Caruso does a wise thing. I mean, he wants to be bothersome to Jokic in the right way. And this is just a physical bump as he gets into his path lightly. You know, there's a little bump there, but it's not enough. It's marginal. It's still in the marginal category. It's not a foul. Now he gets down to a post-up position. And what Caruso wants to do is front him. And, he does a good job. Certainly, Jokic doesn't clamp him from fronting him, so it's a legal play by both guys. Now we have Jokic who's trying to swim him a little bit so he can get back into position, and he happens to touch his headband. Not a problem. The headband might have moved, but that doesn't connote a foul. So now, as Caruso begins to get his headband back in order, he clamps. Now, this is an illegal act right there. So the question is it something that dissolves? Because it can. It's not an immediate act where you go, whoa, automatic foul. Not yet. And as you let the tape roll, you'll notice that he releases very quickly and now is going to play behind him. And here comes the entry pass. Now, while he plays behind him, he plays him behind him very legally. It taps and now he turns. Now, when he turns to pivot, obviously Caruso's behind him, nothing there. It's a layup. But he ends up getting himself so deep under the board that he misses the chippy. And then, of course, people believe, well, you missed the chippy, you must have fouled. He gets his own rebound, turns it back, and it looks like, I'm blocked out here. But the official's looking right there, and it looks like a pretty clean strip. And, two guys are there, and they strip it clean, which is nothing in the game. If you get a clean strip, you play on. It boarded a little bit on the front court contact, but other than that, the green light is on, and we play on through that entire sequence with no foul that was deserving of Caruso.
And on the strip, I think you've talked about this in the past. When you see both arms freely go up over his head, that's usually a good sign that it was a clean strip, because otherwise one arm would end up holding back because it's being contacted by the defender's arm or hand, right?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just one of the things that helped you realize the strip is really clean.
I really didn't like this play, and at least it could give Nuggets fans some solace that Jokic got a few calls, but to dive to the floor like this, with just the slightest contact between his left forearm and Caruso's right shoulder, is ridiculous. I guess he felt helpless and needed to get extreme with his matchup, but this is the sort of thing he absolutely needs to stop doing. They try to run one of their patented cross screens to get Jokic open on the left block, but watch how good Caruso is at jumping towards the ball to avoid the screen entirely, allowing him to wait on the lane line in a fronting position. And there was no lob possibility because they foolishly sent Chet's man to set that screen so he can hover. Since Russ is out there, they will ignore him, meaning Chet can shadow Jokic and dissuade the Murray pass to the obvious mismatch. On the swing, Russ's man can ignore him to double the drive. There's Caruso causing even more havoc as a weak side defender, and it leaves them with a rush shot at the shot clock buzzer that's short. They opt for another pick and roll, which allows complete and utter harassment by Caruso on the Murray dribble. Now, you can see Wallace push off Jokic's right waist to help him jump to the high side, but this doesn't affect Jokic at all. Then he will lightly tap his left ribs, but that's it. The reason Jokic ends up in this position is because the pass was way off target and he can't reach it. There's nothing to complain to the refs on this play as the Thunder race back down court but turn it over. Finally, it was almost a relief. They remembered the one thing that works against this defense: get it to Jokic on the nail and let him go to the basket strong. This time it's a drive to remind us all he's the reigning MVP of the NBA. But instead of hammering this play until OKC was forced to change the matchup, they try to get Caruso off of him with a high pick and roll. Now they want to attack the same way but with Jalen Williams on him. Remember, Williams has more than a 7-foot wingspan. As long as he contacts the ball cleanly first, any other contact is deemed marginal. Nuggets fans were apoplectic at this contact to Jokic's arm, but it's simply not considered a foul since the deflection was clean to start. Clearly frustrated at this point, he throws a flying knee kick into Caruso that could have been an offensive foul. And then Caruso expertly steps around the post-up. Jokic was expecting to be able to lean against Caruso, and when Caruso steps out, he ends up folding over. Plus, the pass was off target, barely getting to his fingertips. Now, does Caruso tap him on the ribs? Yes, he does. Could that be considered a foul? Yeah, it could be, but could this amount of contact cause Jokic to leave the floor with both of his feet in his Superman pose? I don't think so at all. And now the game is out of hand with a frenzied crowd cheering them on. At least they remembered one more time to go back to the only thing that works for them with this matchup, and Jokic was able to generate free throws. But Daigneault started Caruso in the third quarter because why not? The guy single-handedly dismantled the entire offense. And they don't know what play they're running, as Gordon wants his back screen for Brown, Brown wants the cross screen for Jokic, and it's a mess. Because Gordon isn't driving by anybody, they can use extreme pressure. And since SGA has made clean contact with the ball, they can deem any other slight contact as marginal, but they certainly can't ignore a major elbow swing to the head, leading to a flagrant. With a 20-point lead in the game all but over, I was again relieved to see them hit Jokic at the nail, but I couldn't believe he'd hand it off to Murray to jack up a contested long two. I think Aaron Gordon played too much considering how limited he was. And it was weird to see the two defenders so concerned with him on this high post split. Kudos to Jokic for finding the cutter for the strong finish. But the Sharks smelled blood in the water, as Caruso wouldn't let Jokic move anywhere on the court without him by his side. I guess he's trying to get the refs to call a foul with his climbing technique, even though Caruso was in his position first. And they do get him free on the short roll. But once more for the people in the back, because Wallace knocks the ball away cleanly first, any contact to Jokic's arm is marginal and not a foul. And it was fitting that Caruso gets rewarded with the layup, and the Nuggets saw OKC's lead balloon from there. It's always cool to see how coaches strategize to give their teams an advantage. It can also be maddening not to see a counter adjustment when the solution seems so clear. With Gordon being hobbled, it wasn't a fair matchup, and I don't think Denver had a chance to begin with. But seeing a little guy able to neutralize the best player in the NBA over so many possessions was crazy, and a testament to what high IQ and hard work can do even at the highest levels of the playoffs.